Okay, welcome to Chapter 2, Photoshop, working with layers. And today we're going to be talking about the layers panel and layers and how we use those in Photoshop to create our photos. First of all, let's start with just some basics, and that is a definition of layers. Well, layers basically are, it's like looking through transparent sheets, one on top of the other, and all of our layers together are each have their own separate objects that together, when you put them all on top of each other, they create one composite image or one picture. If there's no object on a layer, then you can see through the layers below. And layers let us work on one object of an image without disturbing the others. You can change the composition of an image by changing the order of the layers and the attributes of the layers. All layers in a single file have the same resolution and color characteristics. Now, those things being noted, let's talk about our layers panel, which of course is down here and to the right, the layers panel. When you open an image, like I have this one open here of the fish, it gives it automatically a background image. Now, right now, I want to make a selection of the fish, which I've already done, and I'm going to go ahead and quickly save that in my channels panel by clicking my Save Selection button. And that way I don't have to keep making that selection over and over again in this lesson. I can just simply go and select that image or that selection. Now, in my layers panel, every time when I do a thing, for instance, if I make a text box, it's going to automatically create another layer for me. If I bring in another image, it's going to create another layer. So the layers panel will give you an indication on for instance, what layer am I on? Well, I know what layer I'm on because it's going to be highlighted in blue. Right now I'm on the background layer. In addition, you notice there's an eyeball there, an eye. It shows the visibility. So I can turn off a layer by clicking that eye. Now in this case I'm on a background, so it's not going to work for me. But let me just make a copy of my background, a duplicate layer. And I'm just going to call it background copy. And then I can click the eyeball on it, and so it doesn't show. What I'm really seeing then is this background layer, but I'm actually on the background copy. Now, because it is a copy, my selection is still on. If I want to choose another layer, I simply click on that layer. Just one time, click on the name. Make sure you click the name, because if you click on the eye, it's going to turn off the visibility or turn on the visibility depending on what happens there. So the eye shows my layer visibility. I also have the thumbnail of my layer, so I know what's on that layer. Then I have the layer name. That's the thing that you're going to want to click on, that layer name, to change between layers so you don't do anything else to it. The selected layer is highlighted in blue. In addition, you'll see a little lock on some. That means that layer is locked, or partially locked in this case. And I can always add, like if I select this one, I can go up here and I can click the lock. It'll lock all. This will lock position. This will lock my image pixels. And this will lock my transparent pixels. So all of these are allowing me to lock something on that layer. My opacity is here. Right now it's at 100%. And then I have my blending modes, which we'll get to shortly. Also at the bottom of my panel, you'll see there's a link there. I have a function. Then I have an add layer mask. I have a create new fill or adjustment layer. create a new group, create a new layer, and then I have the trash can, so I could trash can a layer if I chose. So if I wanted to create a new layer, there are several ways to do this. One, I could just hit the create new layer, and then I could put something on that, add to it. Or let's say, for instance, I want to move a selection like the fish or a layer in an image to another image. When I move a layer to a new image, I can drag the layer from the image itself, or I can drag the layer name from the layers panel as long as they're side by side. Well, let's start off with the easy one first. Let's say that I want to drag an image into this fish image as a layer. Well, I happen to have a file on my desktop, so I'm going to just make the Photoshop smaller so I can see. I'm going to click, hold, and drag this image here on my desktop into my current image. And when I do, notice what happens. It puts the image there, and it creates a new layer for it. Hit enter first so that it accepts that layer. And now I'm just going to click the visibility on that layer so you can't see it. So now you can just see the fish. Okay, so if you drag in a photo from a file or a folder, you just drag it in, it creates a new layer. The same thing happens if I just create text. I can just click on my type tool and just click, and automatically you'll see here it creates a new layer for that text. And I'm just going to type fish, and I better select that, and let's see, I'm going to flip that. I'm going to flip my foreground background color so that my words are in white. And I better do that again. There we go. Okay. Now, I'm going to go back to my background copy. Now notice, those two, the picture I drug in from the desktop, the text that I typed, all created a new layer. I can also, let's say I have another photo open. I'm going to open another photo, another image, so that I have two files open. And I'm going to drag one of my layers. I'm going to drag my fish layer here into this other photo to show you how to do that. There is a catch to this, however. You actually have to set your view to side by side. Otherwise, it will not drag it in. I'm not sure why. So I'm just going to open these birds. Open. Okay, now I want to go back to here, and I'm going to go to my channels panel and just quickly hold control and click my alpha channel so that it selects that again. I'm going to grab my move tool. Okay, now I'm going to grab this background copy layer name. Unfortunately, it's not going to work because even though they appear to be side by side, they're not viewing as such. So I need to go up here to my arrange documents, and I'm going to drop down and I'm going to say, okay, show it to me side by side. Now it will work. When I grab from my background copy and drag it into my birds, there it goes. Now it didn't move the selection because on that background copy it wasn't selected. Now I can undo that by just trash canning, and yes, delete that. Okay, now I'm going to go back here. This time I'm going to use my move tool and grab my selection itself, which is just the fish, and I'm going to drag it over here if it will let me. And it did. And I can just move my fish there just like that. So either way, I can drag and drop the layer, the selection or the layer itself. But remember, they have to be side by side like this in your view, arranged documents view, for that to work. If they're not, it will not. It'll let you drag the photo in, the selection, but it won't let you drag from the layers panel, interestingly enough. Select the part of the image that you want to move to a new layer. Alright, well, I want to move this fish to a new layer. So once I do that, I can move the pixels to a new layer by either going Layer, New, Layer via Copy, or Layer via Cut. Now, if I go Layer via Copy, it's going to copy the fish onto another layer and leave those same pixels on the background copy. If I cut it, it's going to put the fish on a new layer, but it's going to leave the pixels of the fish on the background copy transparent. So let's just check that out. Layer via Copy. There we go. Now look, on this layer, here I am, and if I just turn off the visibility on everything and except that and my text, which doesn't really matter, I can see that my fish is there. Now, if I turn back on my background copy, the fish remains there. But what if I go back and select that fish again? Now it's selected again, and I go, okay, I'm going to do a layer via cut. So Layer, New, Layer via Cut. It's going to cut it out of this background, and watch. I'm just going to close off the eyeball. See, now on this layer it cut out all those pixels and they're left with a transparent hole. And then it put them on this other layer. Actually, it was Layer 2, I believe, was my Layer via Cut. It put them onto this layer. Now if I turn this off, obviously I've just got that. Or I can turn it on and I've got the whole picture, which goes back to what I was saying. If you stack them one on top of the other, you'll see how that works out. Now if I want to move a layer of contents within the image, I just use the Move tool. So I can move a layer, like let's say that I want this one, the text on the bottom maybe. I can just grab it and drag it down under that background layer. Now, it's kind of hidden under that background layer. So unless I uncover it by closing off that background copy, it's going to be hidden. So I could keep it and just hide it if I wanted to. Or let's say, what if I show up this picture? But let's say I want it to be on the bottom. Okay, and then I want to, let's say I want to go to this background image and I want to make the opacity lower so I can see through it. And now look, I'm getting like an image back there. Now it's all the way because my opacity is so low. Or I could blend them a little bit. That kind of thing. Now obviously these are not two photos that I'd really be interested in blending, but that's how it works. Now notice too, I can see the word fish again because I have taken that background copy and I've made the opacity less so I can see through it some. We've already talked about if I want to hide a layer, I simply click on the eyeball and it hides that layer completely. If I want to unhide, I make sure the eyeball shows. What about grouping layers? Layer groups are just folders in the Layers panel that I can use to group associated layers with or without linking them. They act as a single layer once I've grouped them. Anything that I do to a layer group, like a mask, blending mode, it applies to the layer group and affects all the layers in that group. The layer group helps you to manage and organize layers in the Layers palette. And all I have to do is choose new layer group, and if you just hover down at the bottom, you'll see create new group, and then it'll say group 1, and then I can drag into that. Let's say I'm going to drag all the fish background and the fish cutouts into this group so they are all together. Now everything in group 1, if I click on the little triangle and close it up, drop it down, you can see that the fish background and the cutouts of the fish are all in that group. So now anything I do to one of these is done to all because they are now grouped. I can create an empty group with the default settings by just clicking that create new group like we just did. And by default it's going to be called group 1, and then group 2, and so forth. Now if I want to create a group containing selected layers and using the settings that I specify, then I'm going to select the layers that I want. So let's say that I want that other photo and my fish. Just going to hold my control button down to select two things, and the fish text. Okay, and now I'm going to open the new group from the layers dialog box. I can go to the panel menu, and I'm going to say new group from layers, or I can press Alt and drag the layers to the create new group button. So new group from layers, or I could press Alt and drag these two down to the create new group, but for right now I'm going to go with group 2. And while we've got the new group from layers dialog box open, let's talk about color coding them. I can make every group have a color associated with it that'll help be easier, and then I can choose the opacity and the mode, the blending mode, which we're going to get to later. I can make those specific and click OK. And now I've got another group set with specific settings for that. I can also change the name of the group, just like you can with just like you could with the channels. When we were saving our selections, you can change the name. I could double click on the group and change the name right now. I could double click on the icon and open up the group properties again, change anything, the color that I wanted, the channels that show, all that. I can also do the same thing up in layer, the drop down menu layer, new, group or group from layers, and then I can go to group properties. See, I'm on group 2, and if I click on layer group properties, it's going to open up that group 2, and I can change any of those properties that I wish after the fact. Several ways to make a group. I can select the items I want, hold the Alt key down, and drag them to the create new group box here at the bottom of the palette. I can go to the layers panel menu and say new group or new group from layers. Or I can go up to the drop down menu layer at the top and go new group or group from layers and create it that way. And don't forget, once you create your group, in that dialog box you can specify a name, assign a color to the layer group, specify a blending mode, specify an opacity level. And then once you've done all that, you click OK. If I want to add a new layer into the layer group, then I just need to click the layer in the layers palette and drop it into that group. Let's say we want to take our fish text and we want to move it from group 2 to group 1. We just simply drag up, and there it is. And then I can arrange them in any order that I wish. So just remember, the one on top is going to be on top, and the one on bottom is going to be on the bottom. Okay, so we've talked about creating an empty group, creating a group from layers we've already chosen. We've talked about color coding our layers. Keep in mind with your color coding, the color appears only in the layers panel. It does not, see, notice how this has that violet tint to it that we chose. Now let's just check out group 1 here. We're going to go to group properties for group 1. It did not have a color, but let's assign it a color just so we can see. We're going to give it red so that it's a clear change. Now look, all of those are red. And it's much easier to take a look really quickly and see what's together and what's not. I can also link layers. Linking layers helps if you need to regularly manipulate a group of layers as a unit. So when they're linked, their contents will always move as a unit, even if only one of the layers is selected. To link layers, all you have to do, now right now they're grouped, but they are not linked. But let's say we want to link our background copy and our layer 1 and layer 2 in our group 1. Well, we're going to select the ones that we want to link, and then we're going to click the Link Layers button down here at the bottom. Or you can go to the panel menu and link layers. Either way, and they will get a chain beside them. And that's how you will know whether they're linked together or not. If you want to remove a layer from a link, you select that layer and click the Link Layers icon again. So, let's say that I want to take layer 2 off the link. I just select it, click the link, and it's no longer linked. These two, however, are. Simple enough, correct? Now we have a set of groups and the layers inside each of those to work with. We know how to link them. We know how to deal with their visibility. We know how to lock them and the various parts of them. We know how to deal with their opacity. And that is part 1 of dealing with layers. Part 2 is coming up.